everything we do, what is the value in it? Why are you involved at your local association? Why are you involved at your state association? Why are you involved at NAR? Where's the value, and how do I control the narrative to demonstrate that to the consumer? And once we start controlling the narrative better, the consumer will start understanding the things that are important to us.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Today's guest has thrown himself into serving this nation, but serving the real estate industry as well. He is active in the Navy Reserves and is active in his local, state, and national real estate associations. He is focused on making real estate agents better. As a speaker and instructor, let's welcome the CEO of the Ant Stroud Group, where always family, never customers is the motto. Ant Stroud, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy.
Thank you.
I'm totally excited to be here. This is like my dream job. So the fact that I get to do this and experience this. So you got everything here. You fancy. So thank you.
I hope to take it to another level soon, but I try.
Trying very well.
But it has been, almost 3.5 years now. Well, it's at least just over 3 years of some trial and error, and things are proved, like you were saying, positioning the cameras and so forth. And one day I hope to have multiple cameras to give those multiple angles. As you see, some of the guys have larger budgets online, on YouTube and so forth, where it's flashing from different sides and so forth. But we'll get there. But let's learn about Ant today. That's really our goal. And I really want to get out. I really appreciate having coffee with you yesterday and getting your passion out. And hopefully that comes across, because I want, by the end of the show here, everyone to really understand where you're coming from and your passion for this industry. I mean, and I think we're at an impasse right now with this whole NAR settlement and the changes and everything. As I've said on the show before, the collateral damage is the devaluing of real estate agents. And now's the time for agents to step up and shine.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting that, even in our leaders, are there good leaders? Are there bad leaders, right? The bad leaders can be good leaders because they can show you what not to do, right? So when we have the NAR lawsuit and stuff and everyone's, oh my God, it's the end of the world, it's the end of the world. Well, if that's the narrative you believe, that's the narrative the consumer will believe. So how do we change that narrative? It's not the end of the world, it's a different world. And how do we demonstrate the positivity of this different world?
Right.
And that's where we need to kind of come from with that abundance mindset and all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is going to evolve too. There's definitely some things that, as you and I looked at each other, like, what's transparency if you remove it from the MLS? What is that actually? That doesn't make sense, right?
Exactly.
And some of the things I think that are going out there now that people are interpreting. And one of the things I really hate about the whole thing is some people they use the term law. There's no law here. That's what really blows my mind, is that a courtroom can now dictate to the rest of the country how they want to do it. So I'm really hoping that, obviously, you're close with Patty Ketchum. We make some influence on the state legislature, says, no, this is the law of the state of Florida, and this is how we're going to govern our real estate agents. They need to be doing this. They need to be putting the commission on the MLS, and that's our law.
Right. And you got to understand the separation of NAR versus what our law says, right? We all prescribe or subscribe to this NAR organization. So if we're going to be realtors, that is a trademark owned by NAR. If we have to subscribe to the law of that organization. So you need to understand, is it the law of the organization or is it the law of the land? There are two different scenarios there. So nobody says we have to subscribe to this. But if you subscribe to NAR, if you want to be a realtor, you sign up for that. We're realtors. We're led by ethics. We set ourselves apart already. So now there's another separation of how we set ourselves apart. There are brokerages out there that are going to decide that they don't want to be part of NAR, which is fine, which means they don't particularly have to subscribe to some of these rules. But at the end of the day, if you want to be a realtor, we have to subscribe to the rules of the land of NAR.
Right. And I want to bring out a little bit, and since we're on this subject, we over coffee yesterday, you mentioned like people are running from NAR, and even maybe in Florida Realtor, and I don't want to say they're running from our local because they need the MLS, right? Prescribed to it. But the importance of the organizations, here locally, it's the Northeast Florida Realtor Association, then Florida Realtor that they're part of, which is also then part of the mothership of NAR, right? If we want to call it that.
Right.
And in the importance of these organizations in our society, really, when we think about it, because the impact of housing has on our society, our economics, everything.
Absolutely. And, when we break it down to the local level, the grassroots level, this is where change is truly made, right? Yes, NAR is the ominous dominus of realtor world, right? But at the local level, what is actually happening down here? What are the consumers actually hearing and believing? And we're the ones who control that narrative. I mean, yeah, NAR can put out commercials and all that other stuff, which is great. And they do that on their behalf. But when's the last time you watched a commercial?
I don't recall.
Exactly. So they're looking at what we as the local ground realtors are putting on TikTok and what we're putting on Facebook and stuff. And so again, controlling that narrative is our job, right? NAR gives us the narrative. We control it by what we're saying and what we're speaking. And if you're running to TikTok to give even half truths are damaging, right? I've seen plenty of TikToks where what they're saying is kind of true, but it's not the whole truth. So again, we have to watch the narrative we are demonstrating to the consumer because they're the ones that they believe. Case in point, when everything was going plentiful in the COVID era, we would post under contract in one day, under contract in one day. So when the consumer thinks we don't do anything because we got their property under contract in one day, or we got them under contract in one day, what do I need you for? When I meet with these consumers, my family members, I tell them the easiest thing I can probably do is bring you a contract, get you under contract. My subject matter expertise, my knowledge, my specialty comes in the 72 steps after that to get you to closing successfully with our partners and our lenders and our title companies. So again, it's the narrative we control that will help us prospect and go forward.
I was just thinking there too. Is you were talking about as every agent's who's active in social media they're putting out a narrative. We all, I forget what the percentage. There's a real estate agent or someone licensed. I wouldn't say they're necessarily active, but with 12,000 agents, a lot of people know. And then if you probably go to a social gathering, a cookout or whatever, right now there's probably a real estate agent there.
Yes.
Statistically. Now, are they active or not? But there's probably someone licensed or has been licensed. And the importance of these organizations, NAR, Florida Realtor, NEFAR, to set the tone, the talking points, basically, so everyone's on the same page and confident. So they are spreading the truth of what's going on, even at that local barbecue. You've got what I guess the point I'm trying to make and draw out of you is, if you're not plugged into NEFAR right now or Florida Realtor, you need to be. If you want to be successful. Well, you can be successful in this industry and never walk into NEFAR. You can do that. But if you want this industry to be at a high level and have a positive impact from buyers and sellers, you aren't saying, oh, what do I need you for? You need to be plugged in and talking about with these talking points and getting the truth to them out there.
Exactly. Yep. And so when you are taking an average licensee or an average realtor or an industry leader, as I like to say, so in my mind, anybody who participates in the associations, whether it's local, state, or national, you're an industry leader to me, whether you have a title or not. Forget the titles. You're an industry leader because you're already in the room, right? So when say me and you go up for this potential listing, right? And you say, I'm going to do HD photos and I'm going to, pimp out your house for open houses and all that great stuff. Can I not say that same thing?
Of course.
I can say the same thing. But what you can't challenge me on is my knowledge. And so this is what the association does for you. You're in the room. Here in NEFAR, we just changed our forms, right? We just now subscribe to the Florida Realtors forms. So when that decision was made, do you know why that decision was made? And if you don't, that's because you're not plugged in, you're not involved. So when you say I am the best representative for you, are you truly the best representative for that consumer?
Right.
And the answer, honestly, would probably be no.
Yeah.
Because there's so many options and avenues to real estate, as you've seen, even saving deals. There's so many options out there, so many things. But when we have an industry that is so ingrained in policies and lands and changes and everything is changing, if you're not in the room to understand why those changes were made, you're just regurgitating.
Yeah.
You're not the subject matter expert.
Yep.
So that's kind of why I believe people should be involved with the
it's definitely I think a new agents coming in, not saying that the experienced agents don't need to be as active. But if you're a new agent right now, you're in your first year, second year, to get down there, not only obviously taking the courses, but I think right now, Mario was advertising on Facebook yesterday about now's the time to put in for the different
vice chairs,
for the different committees and that sort of thing, to be part of those committees. Because if you're trying to build credibility about a subject matter, I forget how many years I did it, but I was on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee for St. Johns County. I just don't, unfortunately, I'm up here in Jackson now, travel all the way down there. But anyway, from when I spoke and I said, hey, I've been on the board, or I was on the board, during that time, saying at our Affordable Housing Advisory, these are the challenges that we're dealing with. That automatically gave me credibility because I'm in that room and we're having those discussions every month of what's going on and what are we recommending to the County Board of Commissioners and so forth.
That's 100% correct. Because again, when me and you are again in front of these consumers and we're kind of, trying to sell ourselves, you better believe I tell them I'm on the board of directors for NEFAR. You better believe I tell them I'm on the board of directors for Florida Realtors. You better believe I tell them I'm on the board of directors for the Residential Real Estate Council of Florida. I tell them I'm involved with this committee. I'm involved with this. I even talk about RPAC.
Right.
So again, I am the subject matter expert because I place myself in the room for our industry.
Right.
And yes, I can sell your house, but again, the knowledge is the power.
Yep.
So if you're not in the room to get the knowledge, you're kind of behind.
The point, and what really rose to the surface yesterday when we were having coffee, is the importance of this industry. Not only because we're in it, right? I mean, obviously, you're in an industry, you want it to be successful because hopefully you'll breed success. But if housing and real estate is not successful in the United States has challenges economically. And the level of service that we need to bring, there's a tremendous amount of fraud and scrupulous activity run through real estate. And, being in the know, being in that room, I like that phrase, you're in that room and sharing it with the consumer. Because I don't think the average consumer doesn't, I don't think unless they paid attention in their economic class in college, understands that when an exchange of houses or a new house is built, how much that is part of our GDP and how our whole economics, let alone that when someone buys a home versus renting, right, they're strengthening the community. If someone buys a home, they're generally going to raise their family, going to stay there for a little bit, right? And it just strengthens the community and how much that real estate agent is a pillar, is an influencer. And agents listening right now are like, I'm not a pillar. I'm not. No, yeah, you are. You are an influencer because you have a lot of these people coming from out of state coming in, and you're showing them the ways of living in Northeast Florida.
Absolutely. Talk about wealth generation, right? I came from poor, ain't got no kind of money any way, shape, or form, right? And I knew nothing about real estate. But if you look at the top 1%, the billionaires and all that, where the majority of them, most of their finances came either through real estate or currently from real estate, right?
Yep.
So as the realtor, how do we have that knowledge and provide that to the average consumer?
Yes.
It's about controlling the narrative, right? So when we're talking about selling your house, is it truly the best interest of you or your family? What are some of your goals? Let's have this conversation. Because the exit plan, even though I would get a commission check, the exit plan, great, sure, sell it. But is that truly what's in the best interest of that family? And the realtors, as us, we got to check ourselves to make sure we have the knowledge to say, hey, instead of selling it, what about renting it? Well, what does that mean? How does that work? Taxes, yada, yada, yada. So again, you have to be the industry leader. You have to be in the rooms where the decisions are made and understand the industry as a whole and not just bouncing from transaction to transaction, because that doesn't help the families.
So as always in this conversation, you've led me on to something that also I think is important and you have experience in. You're with Navy to Navy Homes. You guys have a large property management. Mario really got started in that area of your sailors going in and out of the area, whether they want to rent or buy. What are some if agents that are listening out here who may be dealing with our active duty who are coming in? How do you, because they may only be here for a year, things happen, they get transferred, promoted, whatever. What are some of the conversations? How do you break it down to them? Because I think one of the challenges that a lot of agents are dealing with right now with their sellers is these people come and buying that newly built home in that community. It's probably going to be under construction for another 3 or 4 years. And all of a sudden they get transferred 12 months after being here, they're now got to go to another duty station, and now they're trying to sell that house. So what kind of conversations, how do you approach that with our sailors, servicemen coming in and out with that possible challenge that they may only be here for 12 months?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, all realtors need to go get their MRP. That's, the certification is the Military Professional Relocation Specialist.
Just because they're in Northeast Florida, and you are going to run across these sailors.
But even not, like, we have veterans across the entire country, so you don't necessarily have to be active. But again, MRP teaches you how to kind of speak the language of the military life, right? So first of all, you need that. Second of all, when you're having these conversations, again, what is the end goal of the family and life? Start with the end goal and work your way down. So if they're like, hey, I want, do you want real estate portfolio? Do you want to do these things? So if we're talking about new construction, what are some of the benefits of new construction? Are you a first-time home buyer, right? Because a first-time home buyer versus a seasoned home buyer are completely different mindsets. They understand things are going to break. They understand that, they might have to do some things. Like, they're already prepared for that. But the first-time home buyer isn't prepared for the lawn maintenance. Right? They're not prepared for, if you're not going to do it because it's Florida and it's hot as day outside, are you going to pay somebody to do it? So that's a financial, hardship to the family. So What are we doing there? Right. But if we're going to transfer in 3 years, what does that look like for the property? You still have a good roof. You still have the warranties. You still have all that stuff. So new construction might work. However, if you're in the first phase of it, there's might be 5 phases. So you're now going to be competing with the buyer. So let's talk about the rental options.
Or the builder.
The builder. So yes, let's have those what is your life plan, what is your exit plan, and let's talk about the different options. And you truly only really understand the options once you get into these situations. And I have had situations where we're at the associations where we're having amazing conversations that I never even thought about. So yeah, these realtors are not in my brokerage, but we're all realtors at the end of the day. So let's have the conversations and we synergize and we share. But I would have never had those experiences if I was not involved with the association to meet those realtors, right? So again, when you're working with the military people, it's always the end goal, because there will come an end with orders. There will always come an end. So start there and then work your way back to tolerance and to risk, right? Are they on shore duty? Are you on sea duty? There's a huge difference in mindset there, because now the spouse has to step up. If there's potentially kids, do you know that the number one for like in-law suites and like the number one people who buy those properties are military members? They're the number one category for in-law suites. So you better know, if you have a property that has an in-law suite, a military member will probably be the best option for that property, because when the spouse deploys, they move in the in-laws.
The mother-in-law, or just come help watch the kids, raise the kids, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So that's kind of something
that's an interesting statistic there on that. I really think our housing in general really needs to start going towards these auxiliary units in the new builds and so forth, especially if the price points they're at. They need to be designing those homes with some sort of semi-auxiliary unit. I think we're looking at the statistics of, and it's funny, the cultural statistics and the nationalities of, I saw something the other day, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think our Hispanic friends are more likely to stay as a family unit and live in one house together for a longer period of time, save their money, that type of thing, or wait till the kid gets married before they actually leave. That there's statistics on that. And I think that it's going to become more and more, as affordable housing is just a challenge everywhere, that if I was a builder and developer, I'd be figuring out, if I'm going to put that garage, am I going to put some sort of suite above it or something like, all those types of things.
Yeah. And I think that the source of where we're getting our data, this is the industry, right? So we're talking about the different associations and even some of the benefits. The stat I just read to you, I got that from NAR, right? So as a realtor, we're all here. You just got to be this much more than the average realtor, right? So how do you leverage the benefits from the associations that we pay into? Yeah. Well, do you know that NAR has a library? They literally have librarians. And so what I did, because military is my subject matter expert, in 2021, I messaged the librarians when I found out about this from Lee Brown. So I immediately messaged the librarians, like, what articles, what stats, give me everything you have on military. And they sent me articles. They literally sent me articles within 2 days, and all these different articles and all these different reports. And NAR did a report, I think it was 2018 or 2015. But this report was all about military buyers and sellers. And he gave me all this graphics and all this data. And that's where I got that stats from. I didn't do nothing. All I did was send an email to the librarians at NAR, and they sent me
interesting, Annie, and the latest military buyer sellers Interesting.
Exactly. So now I have data that helps me stand apart, helps me separate myself from the average realtor or licensee because I leverage the benefits of NAR and the NAR library.
It just goes back to what we originally jumped out here and talking about the importance of being involved in these things. I'm going to take just a short commercial break because I want to promote out as everyone RemyGraphics.com. She does these nice mugs for me. It's got the show logo, her logo on the back. Ant's got one in his gift bag there, and she will do one-offs. And of course, they come in different colors. I didn't give you a pink one; I gave you a blue one.
Appreciate it.
But she'll do one-offs, and if you mention the show, you get 10% off. But like I said, these are whether it's nice mugs like this, but she has hundreds of laser engraving type stuff. But I think what is really special, I was watching a end of a podcast yesterday, guys, how he grew in podcasting. And of course, he had some interviews with some really important people. He found very unique gifts. And I think giving unique, special gifts, and it could be just a mug, which this isn't really special, but if you put their name on it, they ain't ever going to get rid of it. That's going to be in their cabinet forever. And she'll do one-offs like that. You could put, welcome to Jacksonville.
She helps you be that much different.
Yes.
We can all give cups with our logos, but when you make it personal to the consumer, you're that much different, and that helps you stand apart. So that's awesome that she does that.
Yep. Awesome. So RemyGraphics.com, I got up there, check out what she's got, and give her a call, see what she can do for you. You mentioned, and you can build in that because always my first question is where you're from, but you mentioned in your bio that you started doing some things after high school, but it was your grandfather that encouraged you to join the Navy.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So he was a senior chief when he got out, and I actually don't remember him too much. I remember one time in bed with him when I was younger, sleeping with him and my grandmother, and then I remember the day he passed away. And that's all I got for you. But I remember what people would say about him, and I remember that he was just this person that I wish I got to know, and I wish who got to know me, right? And so he was a senior chief, and so I was like, let's join the Navy. Why not? Let's do it. I did it at 21. And so I'm 15 years in. I did 9 years active. And I'm 6 years in the reserve, so 15 years altogether. And actually, I just got selected for Chief Petty Officer this season. So I'm going through that now. Right. And it's just one step closer to the connection that I dreamed about. Yeah. And so it's,
Well, and I know some senior chiefs. It's the highest enlisted officer, enlisted. Is that's the right way? Highest enlisted non-commissioned officer. That's what I want to say. But they're like the father of all the enlisted personnel on the ship.
So they're one step away. So it's senior chief and then master chief. Master chief is the highest you can get in the enlisted sign. Right. And so then you have senior chief right below that.
But they are over all the these 18, 19-year-old kids are coming in. They're like their father they're there to protect the lambs type of thing, but and be that go-between and the respect that they what's the word I want, it's the respect. It's not that they demand the respect. It's just the respect that they're given, right? Because you can't, a schlep can't get there. These guys are highly respected on the ship, and if they're doing their job right, all the enlisted personnel love them.
Right. And it's not even the enlisted side, like what obviously going through season now, and I'm learning, it's a special figure, right? Whether it's a man or a woman, the father, the mother, why I have mentors on all sides. And when you truly get into what the chiefs mess in a whole, E7, E89, what they do is really foster the next generation and keep the ship moving. They foster young officers, right? They help train the young officers as well as the senior officers. They help train the young officers to be those senior officers and to show them how to treat enlisted, right? Yep. And then also that they take into consideration the junior enlisted, because a lot of things go wrong, right? And they're trusting, the parents of America are trusting that we as leaders, and then more importantly, chiefs, are taking their sons and daughters and being there for them as way as a parent can't be when the war comes and prepare for them.
Or they're just out on a ship in the middle of nowhere. So your granddad was highly respected. I think that's probably what I read immediately out of you, because everyone would talk stories because they had a lot of respect for him. Right. And wanted to share that with you. Thanks. So when is it that real estate comes on the radar for you?
I was broke and in debt. And as much as I love the Navy, they don't pay. Okay. It ain't, listen, it's very structured. So you have to be it's hard to, I don't want to say get ahead. You can survive with the Navy, but it's hard to thrive and get ahead financially because it's all based on the pay scale.
Especially if you're going to have a family while you're doing it, that puts another stress on it.
Absolutely. And so I was just broke and I had no money. And believe it or not, it was my realtor, because I moved to Jacksonville, didn't really know anybody, didn't have anybody. So it was my realtor who, in real estate, it's the four pillars: know you, like you, trust you as a realtor, right? And so if for whatever reason you're wondering why somebody didn't use you as their realtor, you failed along these four pillars, and you can kind of pinpoint that, right? Mm-hmm. Family members who don't use you don't trust you as a realtor. They might know you, like you, and trust you, but they don't trust you as a realtor because we failed to demonstrate that, right? So my realtor, when I moved here, I got to know her. I realized I liked her. Know me, like me, trust me. I trusted her that she would have my best interest because of what she displayed and the professionalism she displayed. And I trust her as a realtor. So when I would be down, I'm like, I need to sell my house. Like I have no money. Like I'm in debt. We're about to have kids, like it's just craziness. And it wasn't like the first time, she would just listen, and then say, hey, I'm always here to help. And then that would be the conversation. Her name is Bernie Bristol, by the way. Shout out to Bernie Bristol. I love her so much. And one day I called her up, and this is like number 4 or 5, and I'm crying because I'm broke and everything. And she's like, yeah, you would be an amazing realtor. Why don't you be an amazing, or why don't you be a realtor, right? Mm-hmm. The way you care about people, you don't come off as having ill will to anybody. Like you just generally care about people. Like you would be a great realtor, and obviously your personality, right? Mm-hmm. And to leave the Navy, which is a safety check, and go into like this industry of commission, and I believed her, and I believed that she believed I could be great in this industry. Mm-hmm. So I took the test 2 years prior to actually leaving active duty. I got my license in 2016. And the first 2 years, I really, again, let's bring it back to the association. Let's bring it back to our brokers, right? I really educated myself because the Navy was barely paying my bills. So I didn't have to run out there to find leads and do these transactions. So I knew that there would come a day for that, and I didn't have time to play catch up. So I knew the first 2 years of my career while still in the Navy, I needed to get as much education as I can. So I belonged to a brokerage that provided phenomenal education, like absolute phenomenal education. So I just kind of focused on that. So when the time came to run, you might challenge my experience level, but you're not going to challenge my knowledge level. Mm-hmm. So again, setting yourself apart. I don't have the houses, I don't have the transactions, but let me tell you why. And one of my favorite lines that I tell all the people I instruct and I go through, I tell them, use this line. No, if they question you, you're correct. I have not had an opportunity to sell a property like this. I have not had an opportunity to sell in this kind of community. I have not had an opportunity to sell transactions, but let me tell you why I'm ready for this opportunity. And then you talk about your education, you talk about your certifications, you talk about your designations, right? Mm-hmm. So again, that's kind of how it all happened, because I was broke. And this industry truly changed my life. It changed my son's life. It changed my daughter's life. They're going to know things that I never knew, all because I fell in love with this industry. And this is why I'm so passionate about giving back to this industry, because this industry truly changed my life. So if I can help others, if I can help the name realtor, the realtor title, if I could help any kind of positivity or bring positivity to that narrative, I will do it, because it truly has changed my life. And that's why I continue to give back to this day.
Right. How, talking about, being, always talk about the first year, obviously you're overlapping being active duty, you've got that full-time job with the Navy, and then overlapping, you were taking the time to educate. And I think, new agents, you can overdo it though, because you can go down the NEFAR and take all the classes you want.
Right.
You're not going to get paid. You need to be doing the prospecting, the practice, and hopefully you've lined up with a good brokerage that's guided you, or maybe you're just gifted and have a great sphere of influence and you just tell everyone a realtor, they already respect you, so they immediately start referring you business. But really to move along, and that sounds like being a new agent, confidence was another thing that you were searching for in the education. Am I correct?
Absolutely. So 2 things. Education, and I didn't come up with this, so I'm not that smart. But education without action is just entertainment. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to take all these classes and you're not going to put action behind it, you just got entertained for 2 hours, and sometimes you have to pay for that. You know what I mean? So like, you really should have just gone to the movie theaters or something, right? But if you're going to put action behind the education, you are unstoppable. Zig Ziglar once said, if you don't want to learn, no one can teach you. But if you're determined to learn, no one can stop you, right? So again, it's about putting action to the things you want And if you want success, you have to put action to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as we go through the litany of classes and courses, you have to be pushed outside of your comfort zone. You know, you want something you never had, you have to do something you never done. And I feel like I'm just regurgitating quotes, but again, I'm literally living this.
Right.
I go to classes, I do all this stuff because I know the power of that, and I try to put action to that. So,
well, at that time, you're still in the Navy. You just have your first home that you bought at that time, or had you bought and sold, or just you're still living the very first home? And I think that is that time period. If we took a snapshot, your knowledge of the industry is probably similar to 99% of the country, right?
Yes.
And what real estate is, in that what a real estate agent can do, because we know there's a lot of agents. Well, they're dealing with single family homes. Many of them don't even, they get a condo, they start panicking, right?
Right.
Let alone investment, let alone commercial, let alone are you working with manufactured homes, or, there's just a litany of areas. But when you started going to the classes and educating yourself, it had to start broadening your horizons of what's available for a real estate agent.
Absolutely. They say competence builds confidence, right? And so as an industry leader, like, you can be the most extroverted person in the world, but if you don't know jack squat about real estate in our industry, you're going to be as introverted as possible because you don't feel confident. You can't stand on your own. As they say, I stand on business. You didn't stand on business because you don't know the business, right? So again, you have to get that education, find mentors. Kim Knapp was incredibly important to the beginning of my career. Tina Harp, she was incredibly important to the beginning of my career. Mario, he's now important to my future, and where we have come from for these past several years of our partnership. And so what I would challenge people is, and this is one of my soapboxes I stand on, I get very passionate about this. When people say alphabet soup, right? They don't care about your designations. The consumer doesn't care about your designations. Why do we have to do all these classes? Nobody cares. Well, if that's the narrative you want to control, and I always give this analogy, if I may, you get shot and you're bleeding out of your stomach, right? And you run into a hospital and you're laying on the lobby floor and you're like, I need help. If somebody runs up to you and is like, I can help you, and they say, I'm a CNA. Do you know what a CNA is? A CNA is a certified nursing assistant. Almost the entire country knows what a CNA is, right? If an RN runs up to you and is like, I'm an RN, I can do surgery on you, Are you going to let an RN do surgery on you? No, because they're a registered nurse, right? You know what an RN is. Now, if an MD runs up to you and is like, I'm an MD, I'm a surgeon, I can help you. Okay, yes, you're a medical doctor. That is what MD stands for. So you're telling me that the consumer can understand what the medical profession's abbreviations are, and they're competent to understand what the medical abbreviations are, but you think they're, and I'm going to say too stupid, but you think they're not intelligent enough to understand what a CRS is. You're not intelligent to understand what an ABR is, an SRS is, right? What CRS is a certified residential specialist, ABR is accredited by a representative, and SRS is a seller's representative specialist, right? So again, if we have these designations, it's not the consumer who is failing to understand this. It's you as the realtor, as the subject matter expert, who is failing to narrative that, right? Have that narrative with them and that dialogue with them. So again, anybody who says that going to these classes to get these designations, it doesn't matter to the average consumer. No, you're just failing to demonstrate, or you're failing to acknowledge that, and you're failing to find the value in that.
100%. I think, as we mentioned earlier, we're at an impasse right now in the industry, and agents are going to have to be able to sit down and articulate. Maybe they have a little brochure that has, but to explain, what these, because they look at the acronym, and they, everyone knows what an MD is. Some people may look at CNA and think about it for, then go medical, and maybe be able to put two and two together. N must mean nurse. All right, they could put that together. In the real estate world, some of those acronyms are not discernible. They can't quite figure it out. But the importance of the agent right now to show their value, they need to take time and actually explain the importance of having those designations and that you are a professional in your business and you've gathered these designations because you continue to educate, stay on top of the market, know what's going on, and those are your badges.
Exactly. And so if me and you, again, were to go up in front of the consumer, and you're not talking about education at all, you're not talking about your designation at all, but I go first and I say, hey, my name is Ant. I'm an entrepreneur in the real estate industry or the real estate profession, whatever. I say, I am a CRS. I am a certified residential specialist. I will rock that designation till the end of time. It is the most prestigious thing I've done as a realtor, and one of the most things I'm proud about is being a CRS agent. If I tell you what that is as a consumer, what that means for you and the benefit of that, when you go up there and you don't say you're a CRS agent, you don't tell them what it is.
Exactly.
Am I that much better than you?
Yeah.
I am. I'm really that much better than you.
Yeah.
Now, realistically, can you go be a CRS agent? Absolutely. But you're failing to see the value in it. So again, everything we do, what is the value in it? Why are you involved at your local association? Why are you involved at your state association? Why are you involved at NAR? Where's the value, and how do I control the narrative to demonstrate that to the consumer? And once we start controlling the narrative better, the consumer will start understanding the things that are important to us, which are our designations.
You bring up just a super topic there, and especially going in, I think the challenge a lot of agents, because they haven't been doing the buyer's agreement, right? So you got to start doing the buyer's agreement, and you got to start sitting down, and the buyer's probably sitting across you and like, why are we even having this conversation? And now is your time to shine and explain why it's important to be CRS. I'm going to refrain from using the word law, because there's no laws.
Right.
There's just standards, I don't know, or practices that they suggested that people are going to partake. People or NAR has bought into, Florida Realtors bought into, and NEFAR, that this is the way we're going to hold the standards of real estate agents, that they have to get this buyer's agreement. Although there's no one out there to confirm that the buyer's agreement ever was signed or anything like that. It's not like you got to hand it in to somebody.
Well, that's the job of your MLS. So the MLS has the power to say,
to audit you.
They have the power to audit you. Same thing with listings. MLS has the power to do that. So if we're working together and I realize you don't have a buyer brokerage agreement, I could report you, and it is MLS's job, and you do have to submit that to MLS. So they are the gatekeepers. Now, do they have the manpower for that, or that's not my story tonight. But they do have the power to do that.
But it's that opportunity to sit down and explain what, and I imagine in every one of these courses now, they've inserted this 15, 30-minute section into talking about how is this, and then put it around your buyer broker agreement meeting consultation, your listing consultation, and you're talking about why you have this designation, and you're, because like you said, if I go in first and I'm going, hey, I've got these certifications and this is what it means to you, and this is why we need to do the buyer's broker agreement, blah, blah. They're like, oh, I completely. Then you walk in and just say, hey, we just need to do this buyer's broker agreement, and you kind of stream right away. Now they may, I don't know, maybe you say you're going to do it for $500 and they may take that because that's what, but you're going to be out of the business pretty quickly because you're not going to be able to eat off that.
Absolutely. If you're determining your value on what you're willing to take, then you haven't set your bar at all. You're letting them set your bar. You're letting them control your business. I'm the CEO of my company, and this is what I do, and this is what I charge, and here's why I charge it. Let me demonstrate my value. So again, it goes back to leveraging all the tools we have to do that. Ask the hard question. As leaders, it's our job to bring up the hard questions, whether we agree with it or not. I shared with you yesterday, my biggest thing about being a leader is the only thing I promise people as a leader in my mind is to have the hard discussions. The outcome is what the collective thinks, right? I could be outvoted. We could not have the outcome. But again, it's having those hard discussions. So same thing when the agent is in with their buyer consultations or their seller's consultations, I tell my people, have you heard about the NAR lawsuit? Have you heard about the buyer brokerage agreement? Can you ask me to reduce my commission? I flat out ask people, can you ask me to reduce my commission?
Do you actually say that?
I do. I 100% do. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because when they go talk to their friends, if their friends got a cheaper commission because they asked, they're going to
or
feel
their father-in-law. That's the worst one.
Right.
But
They're going to feel dumb, and they're going to feel like I failed because I wasn't knowledgeable enough to ask to reduce the commission. And I would never want the people I serve to feel stupid or dumb for not doing something. So if I say, please ask me to reduce my commission, and we have that conversation, right? And then the answer is whatever I feel like giving them, based on my business plan, that's the answer I give them. So when they do talk to their friends, they can say, oh, I did add that question. So they don't feel stupid. They ask the right questions, right? You never want the consumer to ask the right questions. Plus, that's their option, we can negotiate commissions all day long. That's always been the rule. So I want them to have that option and know they have that option, because they don't know what they don't know until they hire the professional to tell them what they don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why I always ask that question.
I've heard some agents that are actually, talk about negotiating, and you've probably seen some memes on or reels on Instagram or whatever about negotiation, but actually they're actually setting some packages and say, okay, here's my deluxe package, here's my mid-range package, and here's your, economy package, if you want to call it that. What do you have you seen agents do this, or what's your kind of angle on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not doing packages. Like, I offer one product. It's the best product there is,
right,
that I can provide to you as your professional. You take it or you leave it. Like, your other options are Realtor B, Realtor C, Realtor D, right? If somebody wants to offer packages, that's fine. But I believe in systems, and I have all these different options, and I can't remember who's on what track for what track. And that's how you get yourself in trouble, because they sign up for track A, but you're providing track B because you have 3 others who are on track B, so you lump them together. I don't understand the different package deal, but I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I stand on business. This is what I offer. This is what I charge. We can negotiate by them simply asking to reduce commission or something like that. That's the negotiation.
Right.
No, thank you for negotiating.
Well, the important thing, and we've mentioned it on the show for those who listen regularly, that product that you put out there, the photos, whatever marketing you're doing online or anywhere else for that house, are you putting a broker's open on? You're spending money there. That is a representation of you and your service. And when you're doing that, you're not only marketing that house, but you're marketing yourself for hopefully the referral, because people are like, wow, these are first class photos. Wow. He made a video. Bloom's got all these hits on whatever. He had a broker's open, spent $500 on food and drink and brought in a bunch of brokers and whatever. And I felt that helped me and because you dealt with it first class, that's why they're going to recommend you to a friend. And I think too many agents sell themselves short on that, not understanding those things that you're doing, you're spending money on, are a two-edged sword. It's not only for the subject directly in front of you,
right,
it's also the other side, which is hopefully for a future business, because people saw how you did that.
Exactly. And I think people focus on that part too much. But remember, I told you the easiest part about our job is to bring is to get a contract, right? To get an offer, to make it a contract, right?
Right.
People are selling themselves short when they fail to realize the knowledge they need to have from contract to closing and the options that come with it, right? So yes, focus on the open houses, focus on the broker opens. All that's super important. It sets you apart, right? It sets you apart. There's a realtor in our brokerage.
That's the iceberg that's above the surface.
Correct. That you see, right? And then it's my job to explain the iceberg below the surface, right? And that comes after you get that offer and turn it into a contract, right? So there's a realtor in my brokerage who does a phenomenal job. She absolutely phenomenal at open houses. I suck at open houses, right? So if I were to agree to an open house, I would be like, hey, let's partner with this person who does a great thing, right? Collaboration, right? So again, we all have our subject matter expertise, but people fail short to get the knowledge that the industry allows them to set themselves apart.
Right.
And so I really wish that realtors would seize that opportunity and leverage that opportunity.
Yep. Your first year, tell us, I mean, where do you start? Do you start networking with your fellow sailors because you're still active duty?
Right.
So what are you doing there to create those bonds and let them know that, hey, I'm doing some real estate here on the side?
Right. So you got to be careful, because again, we're active duty. So like, I'm in uniform and I can't just be like, oh, you're new check-in. Do you need to buy a house? Right? And believe it or not, I remember there were some other realtors at my command who we kind of got called into
push the envelope.
Right. So one person was like going ham with the command, and the other person was like not really ham, but they were visibly known and vocally known and stuff like that. And so like when I'd be at work, I would never use the government computer. I would never use the government phone. Like, y'all not being able to track me, because they track everything you do, right?
Yeah.
So I remember one of the IT folks coming to me, was like, hey, you need to sign this document. And it pretty much says we're about to audit you, right? And so they cut, like, there was 3 of us, and like this person's stack was this big, like using military resources to go on MLS, like on your computer, like they were like, I mean, just this big, and the other person was like little this big, and I got nothing, right? Because again, I'm not taking that risk, right? So you can't just fully be like, I'm a realtor, use me,
right.
But as just being their friend, just building the relationships, when we're outside of work, we have those conversations, or on Facebook, on social media. That's a lot how I did it a lot of times. I spoke to my sphere through social media because I couldn't get in trouble that way. And so then they would come to me during work and be like, hey, we're a realtor, we need to talk to you. See me after 4 o'clock.
Right.
Right. I would love to see me after 4 o'clock. Right. Or we're on lunch, see me on lunch. Right. But don't get me in trouble here. Right. So that's kind of how I started it. But leveraging the community. What are you involved in? Right. I'm Hawaiian by descent. So I belong to a halau ho'omau ana ika nohona Hawaii. And so on Sundays we get together, we practice our, hula, we learn our culture, we learn our traditions and stuff like that. And so they're here, they're Jacksonville people. I'm an implant, right? And so they have their own sphere of influence. And then just me being there present for what the accomplishment of that group is, not me being there as the subject matter realtor, right? But just inherently building those relationships that also expanded my reach into Jacksonville as well. So I really truly just leveraged myself and what I was passionate about, and that's kind of how I got started.
Would you agree that one of the most important things to do is when you're part of that group is to slowly, hopefully over a period of time, everybody knows what you do, because it is just a conversation. Oh, what kind of work you do? Because most people have some sort of occupation,
right?
And that conversation's going to come up, but your goal should be, your passion's in there because you're part of that group, not to be a real estate networking. That should not be your number one goal, but hopefully over time, just by people knowing who you are going to know that Ant's a realtor.
Right, because they know you.
Yeah.
They decided they liked you, and now they decided they trust you. So now they're going to go into trusting you as your realtor. Right. So it's that line of how you create those relationships. So if I would never see you and just meet you randomly, my goal is not for you to trust me as a realtor. My goal for you is to know me. Then, hey, now that you know me, do you like me? Right. So like yesterday, yesterday was truly like our first interaction for hours. We just were pouring into each other. Right. Prior to that, I'm sure you heard about me. Obviously you heard about me. So then, right. So now you knew of me. Right. Now I'm assuming you determined you like me because you have me on today. So I'm assuming you liked me. Right?
Well, that was already scheduled.
Okay. So then you trust kind of me in a sense and seeing my authenticity and, where others can misinterpret that, you have now firsthand experience with that. And so now I'll be on the show and asking these questions and having this dialogue. I'm assuming you trust that I know what I'm talking about as a realtor, right? Right. So it's that sequence that agents should focus on. Don't jump the sequence.
Very good advice. Very good advice. And I think I think a lot of new agents that are out there, ways to get noticed, create the conversation. Maybe you're a little bashful and so forth. There's no laws against wearing your garb, wear your Keller Williams shirt, wear your Navy, you had your jacket on yesterday, Navy to Navy Homes Property Management. Yeah. Someone's going to see that, and that's just a topic of conversation. Or wear your name tag. That's another thing that a lot of agents say, wear your name tag, because people are going to see that.
Just don't wear it to church. Patty Ketchum is going to get on you.
Don't wear your name tag to church.
Funerals. Don't wear your name tag to church and funerals. Patty Ketchum going to come for you.
You go to the church softball game and wear your T-shirt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sponsor
the softball game. Yes. And it creates, and then people start to know who you are. But how important you think, being involved in these extracurricular things that you obviously, you don't want to be involved in something you're just doing it because people are going to uncover the fakeness of you, right? That you're not really here if your kid's doing Boy Scouts or something, your sponsor, or you go to their meetings, wear your name tag, wear your T-shirt that says Coldwell Banker or Navy to Navy or whatever on them, because they're just going to casually see that. Now it gets in their mind that that's what you do. So hopefully if a question comes up and goes, yeah, I know Johnny's mom or Johnny's dad, I see them wearing their Coldwell Banker shirt, that hey, maybe I should call them, because you have a commonality of the Boy Scouts in this example.
Absolutely. Right. And taking it back to being a leader, right, in our industry, when you're involved in leadership, like I've gotten calls from California, people thinking about becoming a realtor. They're not even in my state, right? But they're seeing that I'm involved. I'm in the industry, right? I'm at the table. And so they're seeing I'm involved. So they trust my credibility. So they're calling me saying, hey, I think I want to be a realtor. What do I do? Or I'll have other people call me, hey, I don't have a realtor over here. Like, I know you do it. Can you have any suggestions? So I'm
Right.
giving out referrals just because, I'm in the industry and that's what they see. Right. And so I would really just challenge people to leverage their passions. There's a lot, you can totally get lost in the associations. You can be overwhelmed. You can sign up for too many things. Like, again, at all volunteer organizations, they will take whatever
You're
want
willing to
give
give.
them.
Yeah.
Whatever you're willing to give.
Right.
And that comes at a cost to family, to business. Like, you got to really balance this out.
Right.
So what I would tell people is find the things they're interested about. There's so many committees and councils and task forces and forums. Like, we talked about this yesterday. I signed up for forums committee because we switched our forums. Do I look like a forums person?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I'm not a forums person, but I know that there needs to be representation for NEFAR on that committee because now we need a seat at the table because that's a table that feeds us, right?
And you feel you have something to add to that. You have a passion to be in that room because you want to make sure that the forums have what they should or shouldn't have, or whatever it is that the discussions went on. You felt you were going to add. Don't be the faker and go to the meeting and you don't really give two hoots.
Right, exactly. You got to be willing to give. And like I said, I'm not a forms person, but I'm willing to give, right? So if we have other agents, because everybody can sign up for whatever wants. So if they chose somebody else from NEFAR, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, no, that's a great person to have there. They stood up, they said they wanted to do it. I'm not a forms person, so I don't need the title to be on forms committee. Do you know what I'm saying? But I'm willing to be in the room for the sake of our members here at NEFAR.
Because you are networked around, you're known by people from all over the state and nationally. And you mentioned, you went to Lee Brown's course, and of course she's coming down next month for what's the RE Bar Camp over at Emerald Coast. And I've been on her podcast. It was a very terrible one. I was her guest. I do want to bring her on here to mine though, and drill into her story, because not everybody knows her, but all the leadership in town knows who she is. Right. And she's from I think the Charlotte area, right?
North Carolina.
Yep. Because being involved from a national basis, in other words, going to some of these conventions type stuff, how has that changed your business and perspective of real estate as well?
Oh my gosh. Like, again, the confidence builds confidence, and the confidence that I have for this industry and being able to articulate that has helped me as a leader, but also for the consumers as their advocates, right? With RPAC, right? I'm a major investor. Go find out, talk about it, look at it, but also representing them. We have all of these different things. And like I mentioned, CRS. Well, CRS is part of the Residential Real Estate Council. Lee Brown's big in that as well, right? REBI, the Residential Real Estate Business Institute. Marky Lemon, if you know her, she's really big in that. Our own president, Rory Dubin, he's big in that as well. There's so many different avenues that will help you be a stronger industry leader, which then you feel confident and can stand on business. So when you're in front of the consumers, you know what's going on. You have your hand on the pulse,
right? Because
you're in the room, right? And so I think that networking, so like you mentioned, I went to Lee Brown. Well, how did I get to Lee Brown? Well, I had a conversation with Kim Knapp the day before or the week before. And she's like, hey, if this is something you're serious about, speaking and instructing, you need to go see Lee Brown, right? So that literally was a week later. It was during the holiday season, like November, and she does this once a year. Lee Brown has a speaker boot camp.
I want to say I saw her on her site the other day. It's like the first week of December this year. She's doing.
So this year it's in December. Well, the week prior to that, I met with Kim Knapp to say, hey, I'm thinking about venturing into instructing and speaking. You know me for these past years. I truly love helping realtor members empower themselves and be successful. Do you think this would be a good venture? Now, obviously this happened over an hour conversation, but I digress. And she, at the end of it, she goes, I know you, I know your heart. You need to follow this. And she goes, if you're serious, right? So again, she now poured into me, but now here's the action. Cause again, you have to put action to it. She's like, if you're serious, you go to Lee Brown. I don't know when the class is. I don't know when it is, but she does it once a year. And I literally left Kim, researched it, and it was literally the following week. This was around Thanksgiving. I was broke, didn't have no money, But you found your way to Charlotte. My mentor told me to go, and I wanted to put action to that, and I found my way there, and it has opened my mind. That's where Agent from Abundance was born, with Lee Brown at her speaker boot camp, and she's a legacy piece for Agent from Abundance that I'm so proud of, and we talk to this day about it. So again, it's about knowing the people, connecting with the people, having your hand on the pulse, and following that pulse throughout the industry to be a better advocate for the consumers we serve.
Would you agree that the average agent a lot of times feels like they're on an island because they're not I mean you're involved at a high level. Your involvement is on steroids to the average agent. Not everyone needs to be that involved or be an instructor or be a speaker. They can be an influencer by being in the room and making suggestions, in local decisions. Like you said, everything happens really locally that actually makes changes and so forth. But if you feel like you're on an island, you need to be right now. They're taking applications for 2025 for these things. Get involved. And then you're immediately in a room with like-minded people. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Like I absolutely have loved, because again, your colleagues challenge you. You can't BS your colleagues. They know this industry. You might unfortunately BS the consumer, but you're not going to BS your colleagues. So they're going to challenge you to know the right answers, to have the right answers. But hey, here's what I learned from my mistakes. Don't do this. So you have the answer. And then same vice versa. You share those kind of learning opportunities, as they say. And so when you don't need to be like me. Right. That's why I met with Kim. Kim, this was something I felt I needed to do for me and the passion that I am going down. Right. So for the average agent, it's not about titles. If you think you need to be the president to make change, you're absolutely incorrect. I am currently the president of MRE. So nobody really knows what MRE is yet. MRE is the Military Real Estate Council. I remember there's a women's council.
Is it MRC or MRE?
MRE.
E.
So military members, real estate council.
Okay. RE being real estate. Okay.
Yeah. So RE. So how we came up with that and how I came up with that is I did the local leadership academy. So if you haven't done your local leadership academy, this is your first step. If people want to know how to get involved, obviously you go and attend meetings and stuff. But if you truly want to see what's behind the curtain, go to your leadership academy. So I graduated leadership academy in 2021. And I thought, because I learned that there was all these different councils and task forces and committees, but there was no armed forces committee. There was no armed forces anything. And obviously I'm a big military person. And so coming from that brotherhood and that sisterhood of the military, you own your own business, right? So you're kind of alone in a sense, but then through the brokerages and the associations you gather. So what I realized is there needs to be something for the military member, right? And so last year, I graduated from the state level leadership academy. Florida Realtors offers a phenomenal leadership academy. So you want to do your local, then you want to go to state level. And so what I realized was, hey, I have this idea. It's called the Military Real Estate Council. And what I did was I pitched it to 6 other of my leadership academy alumni, plus one other person after that. And so they believed in it, right? And so they said, absolutely, we need this because we have women's council, we have the residential real estate council, you have REBI, but there's nothing specific for the military members, and they need protecting. Our military men and women, our military families, veterans, they need protecting. So we want to create a council just for that purpose. And so we came up with MRE. And if you know anything about the military, when you deploy, you actually eat MREs. It's called meals ready to eat. Right? And so when we were coming up with the name, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. Let's just call it MRE. Right? So it's the Military Real Estate Council. And so we have about 6 of us, myself, Chuck, Omar, Paige, Paul, and Jennifer. All 6
No, it makes logical sense because, again, when I first started mortgages 19 years ago, VA and FHA loans were like 2 or 3, 4% of the actual loans going out. Now 45%. How much of those are VA? And then we live in Florida. So obviously we have a lot of retired veterans here. So you have different challenges, whether they're retired or active duty or anywhere in between. There's challenges, housing allowance, that you need a committee to immediately feel the pulse of what's going on there. And then obviously bring it up the chain and say, hey, housing allowance just ain't cutting it in Jacksonville. We need to get with our congressman. We need to let them know that. And the only people who are going to know that and know that quickly enough are people in a council like this.
Exactly. And so when we're talking about change and leadership, when you're involved in stuff like that, I'm not a president of nothing, right? But I had this idea and I found like-minded individuals who believed in this idea. So now we're creating MRE, which we think will be a national council as well. You know, we're making change, and we're not the president of NAR. We're not the president of Florida Realtors, right? So we have this idea. We bring it to Florida Realtors as our mothership, right? We brought it to Margie Grant, who's the CEO of Florida Realtors, phenomenal leader, you know, and she believes in it now. Right. So now she's backing us, and we brought it to Christine Hansen, who's the first vice president for 2025 for NAR. Right. And then we also brought it to Colin Mullen. Right. He is running for first vice president for 2026. Right. So we're bringing it to the people through the connections. But again, I'm Ant.
Yeah.
I'm here in NEFAR, but yet I have this idea that now is hopefully going to take on this national stance.
I think what I've seen in the lending world, again, I started my career at Quicken Loans, as many of the listeners know. In 2005, Quicken Loans didn't even do FHA or VA loans. We didn't start doing them until 2008 after the collapse, and then FHA had to come in and start saving people, and then obviously the VA part. But since most of our service people now are leaving with some sort of disability in some way, shape, or form, maybe just 10%, them not having to pay the funding fee, for them to do the VA loan for most of their mortgages for the rest of their life makes sense, because the rate's generally just a little bit cheaper. They don't have to pay the funding fee, and they can go, all the benefits, they can go 100%. So the VA loan is just going to be used that much more. So any things that could be impacting them, I'm actually surprised that this council was not already existing.
And that's what I thought. I'm like, who am I? I thought that same thing. I'm like, here I am, Ant, just Ant the realtor here in NEFAR. And yet I have this idea and I see this need, but why has it not been brought to before? That imposter syndrome, right? But at the end of the day, it's a need, so let's try. And yet here I am making this change. I'm not like I said, I'm not the president of nothing, but here I am making change because I care, because I believe the members deserve this kind of knowledge. I believe the members deserve this kind of counsel to help them better serve the community.
Yep. All right, so I want to finish up here, because I know this will probably lead into a couple of other things, but you've started this. Is it a company, Agent of Abundance? You've actually incorporated this or thing, and then what you were telling me yesterday just was, I think, brilliant. By you used the term hub, where they can go, but they're not just getting Ant's vision, what Ant knows, what Ant's teaching. You're bringing in experts from all around. Absolutely. Into this hub. Tell us about Agent Abundance.
Okay, so Agent from Abundance. Agent from Abundance came about when I went to see Lee, right? I'm in this room with probably 25 other people, and these other people are like seasoned agents, like 15, 20 years in. I think there was somebody a little lesser, but I pretty much was the baby in the room, okay? And so like they had their passions, they had all their things, and I had really nothing. I mean, I knew who I was, and I knew I wanted to provide, but I didn't have it in a pretty package. So when I left Lee's,
and they're like, "Hey, I've been in the business 4 years or whatever at the time."
Right? At the time, it was like 5 years, But again, leaders don't need a 20-year resume. Leaders come from people who want to raise their hand and make change. Leaders come from people who want to raise their hand and say, I will be the voice of the members, right? And I knew I had that passion inside of me. Just leadership is kind of who I am, but I have to understand the organization to be an effective leader. And so that's what I've been working on. So I went there and I realized that I was stressing. I was totally stressing because I didn't have my thing. And so, funny story, I went to the bathroom, and I'm going to the bathroom and I'm standing there and I'm using the bathroom and I'm like, I'm stressing out. I was like, Ant, stop. Like, you're in a scarcity mindset right now. You're in a scarcity mindset.
You were nervous because you just went through like the first session of Lee's thing and you realized the room that you're in?
Yes.
Okay.
And so like one of the ladies, she's amazing. Her name is Crystal. And so like it's crystal clear, like realty or something like that, right? Yeah. I'm like, that was like genius, right?
Crystal from here in Jacksonville?
No, she's gonna hate me, but I think it's Arizona, somewhere Kansas, maybe Oklahoma. Okay, listen, somewhere over there. She's amazing. Look her up. Anyways, and so like she had crystal clear, and I was like, that's genius. And this other lady was like, her brand was like how to be the realtor in the room, how to be that person, right? Her name is Ashley. She's up north, and so she's phenomenal. Everybody just had their thing, and I had nothing. I just had a will to give, and I just didn't know how to put that in a package. And then I was, like I said, using the restroom. Stop, like you're just chill, Ant, chill. You're coming from scarcity, come from abundance. And then I was like self-talking to myself. I was like, you're an agent from abundance. You're a realtor from abundance. I was like, Agent from Abundance. Like that's how that name came about. And so the concept came about because if you look at Lee Brown, absolutely love her and everything like that. She has so much to offer, right? And so she has all the Lee Brown stuff. Marky Lemon has all the Marky Lemon stuff. And then, other influencers have their stuff like that. But then there's no one hub. And does everybody need to be a Lee Brown? No. Does everybody need to be a Marky Lemon? No. Does everybody need to be Ant Stroud? Absolutely not. But if you look at our industry, almost over half of our industry is going to be coming of retirement age. And as well as I do in real estate, you don't retire. You just say, I'm done working, because there's no retirement plan. There's no
you try to turn off the phone.
Exactly. That's it. You stop making money because you're not really doing anything, right? But where does all that knowledge go? Again, power is in the knowledge. Knowledge is after you get them under contract. So all these people will be getting out of this business. Where is their knowledge going to go? So I wanted to create a hub where they could say, hey, Ant, I don't have time to build a tribe. I don't have time to be an influencer. I just know I have a course that I can write, or will you help me write a course around this knowledge? And then also you partner with Agent from Abundance, and we build you your own landing pages, and we build you your own courses. And so you can continue to still make income. I wanted there to be a way for realtors to retire and have their knowledge work for them. So that's just kind of one avenue. But the other aspect of it is the membership club. There will be a membership club, but on the membership club, you're not going to hear Ant speaking. You're going to hear Tracy might come in for, if we have a finance day, right? So Tracy might come in and do finance training. And then maybe I can get Marky Lemon on the show. Maybe I can get Lee Brown on the show. Maybe I can get Patty Ketchum. If you're only learning from me, you're only going to be as smart as me. And I'm not that smart. Let's be real. Okay. But one of my chiefs very early on said, Ant, you know a lot, but together we know it all. And so that's the concept I want to bring to Agent from Abundance, is just everybody. And I have a whole 10-year plan. There's going to be, I don't want to give too much away, but yes, Agent from Abundance I want it to be a one-stop shop of realtor resources, or real estate professional resources for education and tools. And I think that we can get there because there is no one-stop shop. I don't even remember where I got my last business cards from. It was this other website. But I get my buyer consultation forms from this website, right? There's no one hub that kind of does everything.
Well, you need to, Lee Brown has been in the Carolinas. She knows Carolina real estate. Marky Lemons knows Chicago real estate. Not saying that there's much difference. They would survive if they went to another market because they know enough about the business.
Right.
But they don't know enough about Jacksonville and, the different things of Florida, taxes, CDDs, things like that are different here than they may be somewhere else.
Right.
And to provide that from someone who's an expert in that region, I think adds great value, because every region, every state is a little bit different in some of those things. And then someone who's after knowledge like yourself, you would want to dive on. Hey, I'm moving to North Carolina. I need to know about, I can go to Agent from Abundance, and I know Lee Brown. She's does classes on there, and she's from the Carolinas, and she can, I'm sure she'll bring up the different specialty things about the Carolinas, whether it's closing costs, or like I said, we have CDDs here in Florida. I think Arizona, they're growing as well, and some in California. They're not everywhere. Most people don't have no idea what those are, right, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have attorney states, we have not attorney states, right? And so again, with Agent from Abundance, there's going to be membership for the general realtor. How do we elevate you as a realtor, right? We don't talk about contracts. We don't talk about, broker questions, specific the law, that we're not attorneys. We're not going to talk about that. But we're going to talk about how to elevate you as a realtor, right? Marky Lemon, Lee Brown, they can teach you how to be a realtor and elevate you without having to be in your state. But then there's subcategories. If you're the Florida realtors, we'll do webinars for Florida realtors. We'll bring in those state subject matter experts as well. Again, we're creating this one hub, this one voice, this one brand. But again, it's not the Ant Stroud show. I don't want it to be the Ant Stroud show.
From a marketing standpoint, I mean, to leverage the influence of those others. But like you said, and Navy said, you know a lot, but together we know it all.
Absolutely.
And I think way certain people present, maybe some people's credibility, them being women, who knows, whatever it is that connects and then allows the information to transfer. Because I think we all have different plugs.
Yep.
And if your plug doesn't quite match theirs, you may match someone else, and that by offering a variety of different instructors to go to, there's going to be someone on there you like and you connect with, and
Absolutely.
it's going to flow.
Absolutely. So I'm excited where it's going. Right now, we're focusing on the benefits to the realtors and the real estate professionals. The next step is going to be talking about leverage for brokers, right? Because there's so many brokers out there who are the smaller mom and pop shop broker kind of types. They need guidance. They need help. Now I'm not a broker, you know, so I wouldn't be leading that charge. But again, Agent from Abundance wants to bring that knowledge and expertise to you. And then there's a leadership aspect, right? Our industry leaders, there's no platform that really develops industry leaders other than your leadership academies, right? Where do they go after that? There's so many other things, because in Leadership Academy, you have a very finite time and it's 1 year. Mm-hmm. Where's the development after that, right? What about parliamentary procedures, Robert's rules, like how our meetings are run? So again, there's 3 different avenues that Agent from Abundance wants to tap into, because again, it's about all of us. It's not, about any one realtor.
Well, I'm sure you're going to offer a wide variety, because there's some agents who they don't want to be on a board and know Robert's rules. It's not really important to them.
Exactly.
But that there's going to be all the real estate subject matters at all different levels that they'll be able to pluck out of here from different people. And I think it's a great idea. I think, and I think it has people ask me about starting a podcast, for example. And I was watching actually a very high level podcaster, Patrick McDavid. He put out this video, 20 things about a podcast that, if you're going to start a podcast, you should know. And the thing is to have, there's no end game. In other words, do you have an unlimited amount of content that you can create? There's an unlimited amount of real estate. It'd be years and years and years before I could interview everyone who's licensed in real estate, or even just the top, real producers in all of Florida. If I interviewed everyone who was a Jack's real producers or an Orlando real producers or someone that produces in that level, I would be doing podcasts for years. And then I'd have to go back to them and update, right? There's so many different things. And I think this here, the hub, there's so much knowledge, and the fact that you're crossing state lines and you're going nationally, there's an endless amount of content that you'll be adding on here, and there's always something new for someone to pick up on. And I want to tell you, there's something to learn from listening to other states too. Yes. And I picked up something very early when I was learning how to do before I even did the first episode. And I was listening to Dustin Brome, Massive Agent Podcast. He's out of Utah. He's now with Real. He used to be with EXP. He was interviewing this guy from Montana, this agent who did this video on buying real estate in Montana because all these Californians kept coming in. So he said, screw it, I'm just going to do a video and talk about the bears, talk about, you need a plow and you don't have internet necessarily if you're buying this house out in the boonies, right? And all this. And he just went on how he blew up and how that changed. And now he ended up writing a book because he was already doing a blog. So he took the blogs and they made it into a book. And now he's known as the expert in Montana. I'm in Florida. Dustin Brome's in Utah. That guy's in Montana. Could I not do what that guy in Montana did? 100%.
Absolutely.
And by listening to these cross the lines, you pick up little things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that abundance mindset. And, the fact that I can create a company that will hopefully help my colleagues make income, right? You kind of want multiple different streams of income. And we have so much knowledge. Like, how do we leverage that knowledge? Mm-hmm. And I think that by creating Agent from Abundance and what I have planned for it, I think it's incredibly powerful because it can go anywhere. It can be for anyone. And like you said, you pick up what you want to pick up and you put down what you want to put down. Right. And so when Patty Ketchum, she's a founding investor in this company. And I think that speaks volumes, that she believed in this company that I'm trying to create.
Get Patty's endorsement is Patty, I think, is one of the most influential, if not the most influential person in Florida real estate. She's Miss Florida real estate in my mind.
Yeah. She's in a lot of people's minds. She's absolutely
she's
rocking
awesome
it because she shows grace at every turn and at every step. So we love our Patty Ketchum.
We talked a little bit about RPAC yesterday. And again, another impasse here with this NAR lawsuit. I personally think, and I'm not a real estate agent, but all agents right now should be pouring into their local boards, the state, and into NAR, because those people need not only just to know that someone's supporting them, but obviously there's some financial part of it. And you mentioned you just for $20, you're already on whatever level you mentioned it. But if you think about your business and you want to influence, if you're really not, you're not going to put the time in, then you need to put some dollars in place of you physically and your time, because there's some people out there that are doing great things. And I think it's important. And I'm going to try even more here with the podcast to try to grab, people that are involved in some of these boards and bring it out, just as I had Mario on last week, talk about what are they doing at the board, what is currently going on, right? And because I think the average agent, again, doesn't realize what's going on at the board because they're just not there and they're not interacting with someone who is active at the board.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely, there are people who, not all 1.5 million realtors can be involved at the level of what I am. And trust me, I'm barely at an entry level as well. Let's be real. I'm at entry level, right? There are people who are so involved way above me, and we need them, but what we need to do is make sure we're representing for our industry. And we're representing and showing up for the tools and the resources and the avenues that represent us. And so I would really just challenge people, if they want to be the subject matter expert, if they want to be the industry leader for their consumers, then they do need to find out, get involved.
Would you, I think you think about other organizations that we know and lobby, and they're obviously there daily at the legislative offices of our representatives. Take the United Auto Workers, for example. We know building automobiles in here, that's part of our economy, because everyone has to have a car. It's just our culture. We live distance. Most people have cars. You're buying, selling. The jobs that are involved and everything that has to do in putting a car together, there's so many, that is so similar to housing. And everything that's involved in building a house, buying and selling houses, different, all the aspects, all the things, whether people are buying furniture or buying appliances, there's all these other ancillary effects that housing has. And I think the real estate industry has been sleeping, not completely out, but they haven't been challenged until this recent thing about how are you doing your business. And they're coming in, and obviously most real estate agents going, how is transparency, taking it off the MLS? How is that being transparent? And what are you talking about? Redlining people or guiding people there? I mean, yet there's fraud in every business, but we don't have a problem here.
Right.
There's not this rash of fraudulent things going on because of all the regulations, especially on the lending side. I mean, we get we're after money laundering and everything else, right? I was just telling you about a deal where we got to get these extra documents just to show, this dollar, right? And we've policed ourselves very, very well, but now is the time to step up and actually go and be in front of these legislators, in my opinion, and actually say, okay, yeah, we were just been practicing and been doing this, and it's always been negotiable, but there's no stamp that says this, that, or the other thing. But now you want to get a legislators involved now and make some of these standard things that the best practices, make them some legislative, if you want to call it a law or guideline or whatever the legal terms are, from the state level. So we're not ripped off by these lawyers, which I think it's all been a money grab. There's no one that has benefited other than the law firms that have taken these lawsuits.
Absolutely. And you think about it, we talked about making change. We talked about leadership and all that stuff. At least here in the state of Florida, I'm not too familiar with it on the national level, but we have key contacts, right? So what is a key contact? A key contact is a specific representative, a realtor, who is charged with expressing the realtor issues. Right. We're not Republicans. We're not Democrats. We're realtors. We're realtors. What is the realtor issue? And so we have these key contacts who are connected with us. So, recently back in May that the VA decided that they would temporarily allow buyers to potentially pay the commission should they need to do that. Right. So
which I disagree with. The VA should have came back and said, no, we're not going to allow it. Figure it out. In my opinion,
which is how we want to fight that fight, but at the end of the day, in the interim, who does that potentially hurt?
True,
right?
100%.
So again, yes, we as their advocates want to say fight, but at the end of the day, we need to get through.
Right.
But how did that change come about? What most realtors don't know is that probably 2 to 3 weeks prior to that decision being made, was legislative meetings at DC. So all the key contacts go to DC and meet with their legislative representatives. So take, for instance, our immediate past president, Diana Galavis. She has been the key contact for Congressman Rutherford here in our area for several years now. So when she went to DC and met with Congressman Rutherford, she took Mario with her, right? Because Mario is very familiar with the military issues because that's what he is.
He has credibility in the area.
Absolutely. So she knew that, right?
Yep.
Yes, Diana Galavis is the subject matter expert when it comes to being the key contact for Congressman Rutherford, but again, she leveraged Mario's knowledge. Again, she knew a lot, but together we know it all. She brought Mario with her. Mario had a conversation with Congressman Rutherford. Well, do you know what committee Congressman Rutherford sits on? He sits on about 8 or 9 or something like that. One of those committees is Veteran Affairs. He sits on the Veteran Affairs Committee. But Mario is expressing this issue to Congressman Rutherford, who has a seat at the table on Veteran Affairs. Now, Congressman Rutherford is familiar with the issues that our buyers are experiencing, our veteran buyers are experiencing. But it
or could experience. But yes, I agree, 100%.
Right, could or will experience if we don't get something changed or on either side, right? So you can't tell me that we don't affect change at a local level because that's how the conversation happened. Diana Galavis brought Mario to the table. At the table was sitting Congressman Rutherford. Congressman Rutherford sits on Veteran Affairs Committee, and then he brings it to their attention. And let alone two to 3 weeks later, this change happens immediately. So yes, realtors make a difference, and they make a difference for our consumers. But again, we got to get involved. We got to understand how this process works.
Right. And whether that was done right here at NEFAR or was done over in Tampa or the San Diego Board of Realtors, whatever they're called out there, you got to be contributing to RPAC in some shape or form. You know, throwing them $100, I don't think is a big deal. You can make good money in this business, and you have to keep the industry moving forward and having, obviously, like you said, who is that going to hurt? It's going to hurt the veteran. It's going to hurt the veteran because he can't buy the house, which then hurts you. Right. So by keeping him moving forward, now hopefully, brighter minds, as I think as the smoke clears, hopefully we have a new administration and they come in with a different, pro real estate agent attitude, because I think the current administration is trying to get into the real estate agent's business. I have ideas of what that motive is, but nothing's fact. But they're not being positive towards it. I don't think.
Right. But we just need to remember we're advocates for our consumers,
for
our colleagues, for ourselves, and just get involved.
Yep. So you can be a Mario and have the knowledge and credibility, or the president of NEFAR to actually make that meeting happen. Or you can help them financially and support them because they need money to travel up there, and they need, the influence that they have on having those meetings with those people. 100%.
Absolutely.
So please be donating to RPAC. I think it's more important than ever right now.
Right. And it's not even in donating, it's investing. You're investing in your profession. You're investing in your consumers' advocacy.
100%. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, this was amazing. Like I said, one day, hopefully this will be my day job. But, I'm loving this. I'm loving the setup. I feel real fancy right now. So, I appreciate you, and I appreciate the listeners of Real Estate Excellence. And I hope that they learned something from me, because again, I don't know everything, but I know that if I have connections, I can know a lot more.
100%. Any agent listening, if you have questions, reach out to Ant. If Ant doesn't know the people he knows somebody that knows what you're probably looking for and probably could guide you in the right direction. And my call to action is please subscribe to my Instagram. Please subscribe. That's at Real Estate Excellence, Real Estate Excellence. Also in YouTube, where these videos are there, as well as my short form videos, cuts from the show. Please feel free to share them, but please subscribe, and then subscribe on Apple or Spotify or whatever platform you're listening on, so that you're getting every new show. So that's my call to action for everyone. I appreciate you, Ant.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.